What's going on? Boys, thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff. Arm yourselves, life stuff. Okay, the next installment in the newest saga, but we'll start with the theory. I think sociopathy isn't as complicated as it's presented to be, if you look at the world through a Jungian point of view. I've been interacting with a diagnosed sociopath for the last 6 days, I think. And I think what's going on with sociopaths is their shadows are inverted. As in, a baseline person or a baseliner, which I think is terminology we'll need to start using, thank you, Rimworld. Their shadows are shadows. They are fully realized people, but in the background. And your shadow is all your capacities, not that you could be, but that in fact you are, that you have within you. You're afraid of, you're afraid people will think you are, or better stated, realize you are on some level. Aspects that are totally unacceptable to hypocritical civilized society. And you know it's hypocritical or society is hypocritical because society is defined by shadow repression. This I'm such a good person thing, these evil people need to be destroyed thing. And that's why good society is pure evil. Society and most people repress their shadows so much it strikes back, it overwhelms them, and it acts as the monster you're afraid it is. And we've talked about this many times. Your shadow is probably monstrous, but that's a perception thing, and when you integrate your shadow or try to, you realize it's not so bad. And when you have a healthy relationship with your shadow, you get a flow going together between your conscious self and your shadow. Your shadow gives you strength, the capacity, the necessary capacity for cruelty at times that you need, and your conscious self has more say in directing it because you aren't disrespecting your shadow or hating your shadow because your shadow is a person, you're working as a team. The capacities or aspects of yourself you most repress are often the capacities and aspects of yourself you most need. Now, I think sociopaths are inverted. They, quotes, are the shadow, and the baseline, or the kinder, tenderer side, is the being, fully realized being in the background, in the unconscious. They aren't psychopaths. And it seems like I know they get conflated, but it seems like sociopaths and psychopaths do not like one another. Sociopaths like psychopaths as much as baseliners like psychopaths. And I think that's because sociopaths are not as different or as awful as they are presented to be constantly. Sociopaths are simply an inversion. Now, the consequences of that inversion are very complicated, but what they are at their base, I don't think is that complicated. Because if you understand what your shadow is, you know what their baseline is. Furthermore, you know this human, quotes, human aspect of them is there, but it's there to them the way your shadow is to you. And that got me thinking about shadow work, because shadow work is something we're concerned with on this channel. And this woman has been fascinating because it seems like she is, in terms of structure, going through shadow work, but instead of interfacing and developing a relationship with her shadow, she's doing it with her tender side, her tenderness, her baseline humanity. And that is fascinating to me. Her baseline is the sort of thing you both are terrified of in yourself and need to work hard to integrate with. But as a baseliner, when you integrate with your shadow, you start tapping into that dark energy. You're embracing your quotes evil side so you can do the things that need to be done for yourself and for people you care about. It's like the Willard Kurtz situation. You have made a friend of horror. And when a baseliner does that, they become capable of spooky shit. As in, you want to blame sociopaths and psychopaths and all these people for all the evils of the world. You want to say everything awful with the world is a disorder. But statistically speaking, it's impossible for wars to be fought exclusively by people you say are malfunctioning mentally, and I don't think they are malfunctioning mentally. Baseline humans are dreadful because most people, most societies don't do shadow work, meaning they're controlled by the evilest aspect of human nature with no way to control it, and probably not even any awareness that this is happening. That's why kindness people are so cruel. That's why mental health people are so cruel. That's why charities and nonprofits are what they are. That's why the person getting groceries in front of you is terrifying. They are terrifying. We live in an age of repressed shadows run wild. But then you look at a sociopath, and even without any of this self-work going on, there are two things working in sociopaths' favor in terms of goodness, or why you're probably better off, or you should feel more comfortable around a sociopath than Joe Dipshit. One, they are the shadow, meaning that terrible, cruel aspect is impossible to repress. It's at the wheel. It can't be repressed. So by default, by merit of being the one at the wheel, the shadow knows how to live in society and get along. Maybe not smoothly, maybe not friendlily, definitely not smoothly if they haven't worked on themselves at all, but there is a level of stability and consistency to them, a level of normality, versus baseliner Joe Dipshit, who has been waiting 5 years for an excuse to go off on somebody, fueled by his denial of his shadow. So when his shadow comes out, it'll be explosive. And then the other thing working in sociopaths' favor is if they decide to do self-work in any capacity, they can only get, quotes, better. We talk about psychopaths sometimes. The way part of what shadow development is achieving their base state, but with a baseline human's understanding of it. Meaning you can use it in a more sophisticated way. Because you know what it means, how it feels not to be like that at all times. In the same way, when a sociopath does anti-shadow work, they develop the ability, the capacity for kindnesses, for empathies that almost feel unheard of to baseline humans. Because theirs is a tenderness they have worked for and earned. And this shadow work, anti-shadow work thing is so fascinating to me. As in, when we are trying to understand and communicate with our shadow, we gotta do weird shit. We gotta break out the chicken bones, we gotta cast stones. We need to interpret, we need to act like detectives to confront this side of ourselves we're afraid of, and then to integrate it. It's like a big detective case she does the same thing, but with emotions and kindness and empathy. As in, you watch yourself do something evil, and you don't know where it came from, and it spooks you probably. She'll do the kindest things and then not associate with them, with what she's done, or even that there is this side of her. That tender emotional side of them is as alien to them as your cruel, unfeeling shadow is to you. But in both cases, both sides are still there. That's why sociopaths, it feels like, I've been watching so many interviews, it feels like in many of them there is an urge to understand and to integrate and to be understood. As we said, I think last time, like international relations, except instead of geography, it is cognition. They are from a very different culture, but they're still people. And in the same way, you, a baseliner, can work and interpret smoke signals, internal smoke signals from your shadow and try to communicate to become more whole and more monstrous, but in an effective way that you're participating in, having it instead of being had by it, becoming a demon, really. Sociopaths can walk in a structurally identical path to become angels. And I think that's why she and I were mystically magnetized to one another. Beings alien to one anher, attempting to walk the same sort of path. And it was something else, this level of attraction to this woman, but also physical terror of her. My nervous system did not like her. I felt on alert mode, like I was dealing with a predator for days. But that makes perfect sense when you consider it's probably an inversion. Because how do you feel about your shadow? That Jake dream, the Jake and the Clones dream, I have a video about it. I'm not going to get into it here, but that was my shadow speaking to me as clearly as it could. It disturbed me. I tried to deny it, I tried to repress it, and then over time, because I of course couldn't let it go, accepted it and started integrating it slowly. And I feel a lot better. It was that, except with a living shadow. I think that's what sociopaths are, living shadows. Shadow people. And it's funny how this works, because that was one of the first things we talked about, was the way I said this assuming she was an ENTJ. We're probably shadows of one another and we need to integrate. That turned out not to be the case in the way I thought I meant it, and it turned out to be exactly the case these many days later in a way I wasn't expecting. Life fucks with you sometimes. It likes playing pranks. And we did end up unlocking quite a bit in one another for one another. We took leaps of faith for one another, and it paid off. And I think she's one of the most angelic people I've ever met. I'm normally a nobody's special person, but she's special. And maybe a lot of them are special. Because she, this naturally monstrous, not to mince words, person, fascination with sadism, liking to see people unhappy, to see people miserable, naturally manipulative, naturally unfeeling, or at least not in the way we understand feelings. Because I think they do feel things, and I think they feel a lot of things. But it's the same way your shadow operates. All that is in the background and must be interpreted. And what you feel is not the feeling, or what they feel is not the feeling, it's the reaction to the feelings, especially when they're intense and they break through, And even then, you're dealing with the reaction. That's the same way you deal with your shadow. As in, someone throws a ball at you and it hits you, but the only sense you have access to is touch. You realize something has happened, and something has happened, something clear, something distinct, but you need to figure out what it is with a limited set of perceptions. Anyway, her default state completely justifies the physical reaction I felt to her. But she was dedicated to the game. The game being shadow work, or for her, anti shadow work. And I've never felt so afraid of somebody I knew on some level I could trust. Just about as much as a person can trust a person. I've never felt so defensive around a person with a positivity action plan they are making good on. I've never felt so suspicious of someone who has been honest with me even when it would be much easier not to be honest. One of these sociopath interviews said, being a good person is a choice. And for baseline humans, I think that's easy to forget or to take for granted because, of course, you assume your basic nature is good. So all you need to do to be a good person is to follow your basic nature. And that's not what being a good person is at all. And that's why her decision to be good and to be kind and to be considerate, one, means so much more, and two, it's real. As in, there's no, like for a baseline human, letting your hands off the wheel for a little while to relax because you think you'll stay on the road. And as a baseline human, yes, you probably will stay on the road because your basic nature is properly socialized to normal human behavior. But for them, if they let their hands off the wheel, they go straight into a ditch. Because their basic nature is what baseline humanity fears and represses and wants to destroy, even though it is, in fact, part of them. And once again, that inversion is a useful way to think about it, I think. What does it take for you to be against your nature cruel for an extended period of time? And I'm not talking about the low-level badness shit. Most baseline humanity is just bad most of the time. I mean sustained evil. Finding that line and crossing it and staying on the other side of it for an extended period of time. The sort of shit you fear the fires of hell for. You can do that, and you need to do that, but it's really fucked. But when you're doing it, that sort of evil coming out of a baseline human, I think is so pronounced because it's a decision to go that far. And you can feel that. You are taking great efforts to be this awful. The inversion, sociopaths, when they choose to be or try to be angelically good, you can feel how pronounced and intentional that is. And she chose to be kind and considerate beyond the pale. Beyond, at least in terms of emotional tone, to me, what even the nicest baseline human could do. And there's another positive aspect to this, and that keeps them, I think, good even when they are not being good or choosing to be good. And it is the fascination with the shadow, or the anti-shadow. Baseline humans are fascinated with evil, cruelty, beyond the pale cruelty, because on some level they know that is what they are. And always, no matter how kind a person is or what their track record is, they are interested in this darker nature and they are drawn to it. And I think sociopaths feel something similar on the inverse. Now, with her, it might be different, or it probably is different. She is really angelic, and I think it comes from the fact she's an INFJ and a 1W2 specifically. That would explain why her anti shadow work and her decisions to, to try to do good in a sustained way and in such a like a serial killer but serial kindnesser way. It's fucked up how considerate she is. Mastermind consideration. It's probably more pronounced with her. But I'm again, you look at all these videos of sociopaths and the way they talk about positivity and goodness and light. There must be some kind of desire to integrate, not just with society necessarily, but more with this latent unconscious aspect of themselves that baseline humans feel with their shadow, except these sociopaths' shadows are everything good about life. There is a nobility about them. There is a divine aristocratic nature about them. As in, if a baseline human can become cruelty incarnate, become a demon, using their understanding of what it means to be a baseline human, I think sociopaths can become proper angels by knowing what it means not to be these things in the same way. You know, the yin and yang thing, it's not black and white, it's white with black in it and black with white in it. We are positioned on opposite sides so we can take huge, meaningful steps into the other side. And maybe I'm wrong. I recognize I'm being positively and positively melodramatic about all this, but that doesn't change the fact there are patterns. I'm not sure what to do with all this information yet, but it feels important even though I'm frazzled, which now we can get into the emotional happenings where we left off. While still trying to do right by her, which was against my typical judgment, because I felt she was being honest with me and being kind to me in these things, I was still uneasy, and I knew where my feelings were going, or the feelings I already had and what they could potentially turn into. I needed to get out of there fast and try to purge her from my mind, probably over the course of a few months. And it's not damage, but the way she made me feel, if I didn't deal with it then, a couple months seems like a lot for just a few days of interacting with someone, but if I had gone on interacting with her longer term, that could have been a year's, or at least a year of damage situation. So, test of will. I don't want even to try to be curious, although I am, and I'm hopeful. I don't want to be hopeful. Let's just kill this now, before it gets worse. And we parted, not a door slam or a ghosting situation. I made sure not to do that because I respected her enough, and even then cared about her enough not to do that. But cut off as much contact as possible and leave one opening. If there's an emergency, you can contact me through here. One day goes by, she contacts me through there. And it took me a while to, because I knew it wasn't an emergency. This is manipulation. This is what this is. But I'm gonna bite and see what happens. Again, against my better judgment, but so good at manipulation she is. God, if anything were different, I would have been able to have said no, with all my power. But we get back to talking, and it's not an emergency, of course. I'm afraid this is some kind of control or power play against a vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable person. But she continues to be honest, she continues to be kind, even though that was the discrepancy, is if you respect my decisions, if you care about me, why would you manipulate me like this? Because that was peak manipulation, getting me to come back. And she again made it clear that she didn't love me, couldn't love me, if she would, wouldn't love me. But she wanted to keep talking, and I smelled something was there. And that's when she told me about her sociopathy diagnosis. But I made the decision to see this through and try to do right by her, and one of those decisions was to love her. Told her I loved her, let myself feel love for her, knowing that this will go nowhere. But on some level hoping, because again, that latent tenderness thing, you're hoping in the same way your shadow comes out and does fucked up stuff, you're hoping her anti-shadow will come out and do very nice tender stuff. But a challenge for me, can I feel this emotion that I'm feeling without it needing to be validated or reciprocated in the way I want it to be in another person? Can I be, or can I have my feelings for myself, basically? And I did, and it was such a relief. Feeling this emotion for myself, which feels good. Feeling like I'm doing right by her, which part of love is putting someone else's needs above yours and caring for them. Doing that. Because it was all such a bad idea. Everything was wrong with it. But let's do it anyway. And her not hurting me for feeling the way I felt, and being open about it. And it all felt weird, suspect, because why, other than control or something equally fucked up, would she want to keep me around and let me love her while making it clear repeatedly that she will not love me back, can't love me back, doesn't want to love me back, wouldn't if she could, but still being so kind and considerate to me the entire time? It made no sense to me. But here's something we established, and I don't know where best to put this, so we're going to say it here and hope it informs the rest of the video. When two people decide to trust one another, to be honest with one another, and to be considerate toward one another, life can feel like it's worth living. The issue, at least for a baseline person, is why is that so difficult with other people? Why does it take a sociopath to feel this and to establish this arrangement and then stick to it? Why is a sociopath, traditionally the definition of distrustful and cruel and all these things, the only person I've ever been able to work this arrangement with? It's a statement about how sick society is. And that's another thing. As we were speaking, we established trust is the most basic thing that has gone wrong with the world. And trust is the only thing that makes life feel worth living. Because this is another thing we were talking about. I still haven't nutted to her. It's not lust that is forming this attraction. It was initially. Partially. In large part. But even then, why? I mean, I wanted to nut so badly. Why didn't it work? It was because it felt like she wasn't there. Even though we're supposed to share this same fetish in the same way, with her it was like sex without sex. even with the stuff she was interested in, it was like she wasn't there. And for me, that's hard to get off on because I get off on intentionality quite a lot and intense emotions and all this stuff. But it felt like in our dirty discussions, we weren't opposed and coming together. We were sitting on the same couch discussing the same scenarios that neither of us are in. Really weird. But anyway, my maidenhood is still intact. So it's not lust, because the lust was not directed at her. It was both of our lusts directed generally. What kept us magnetized, what makes life feel it's worth living, what should go right about the world, is trust and goodwill between polar opposites. As in, she still makes me uncomfortable in theory because we do not understand things the same way. We don't operate by the same set of rules. She is a living shadow, and you are a baseline. And I don't think that wariness will ever go away. But why I can relax with her, and she managed to loosen me up quite a lot, is trust. I think I trust her. I will not do anything to hurt her, and I'll take extra cautions to ensure, at least as best I can, not to hurt her accidentally. And she's afforded me the same. Except she's gone beyond that. I think I've worked out why she manipulated me to come back. It was so I wouldn't walk away with a bleeding amputation. As in, my feelings were intense. And based on her fundamentals that she can't love me, doesn't want to love me, wouldn't if she could, that doesn't change the fact that in our interacting, probably not intentionally on her part, I got these feelings. And my answer to that was to murder them with a hatchet and leave the bloody mess there and run. Which would have emotionally... I mean, that sort of thing is always emotionally damaging, but the intensity with which we were interacting, like I said, that would have fucked me up for months. And worse, as another commenter mentioned in a different video, I would have wondered about it for the rest of my life. I mean, I would have gotten over it in those few months, but... and wounds heal, but you have these little things that will never heal. Maybe you won't feel them as wounds, maybe you'll think about them maybe once every 3 or 4 years, but they'll always be there. And this would have been one of those moments if she had let me do what I was trying to do, which was chop off my arm with a rusty hatchet and run. And for me, that's not an unreasonable thing to do. It's brutal, it's awful, but the world is awful and I don't know any different. Nobody has ever shown me any different, given me any reason to think anything could ever be different. So it was a brutal fact, was what that was about to be. And when she manipulated me to get me to come back, I thought it was just going to be an extended version of an even more gruesome amputation. But that's not what happened. And I don't know if she planned this. I don't know if this was her intention. I don't know if maybe it was intentional, but in an unconscious way. But this is the way things turned out, and it was angelic. Superhumanly kind. She allowed me to feel the emotion I was repressing, the intense emotion I was repressing. She made me feel like it was okay for me to feel this way and that it was a nice emotion to feel. As in, it's okay to feel it and it's good to feel it, even though she can't and won't reciprocate. And she kept emphasizing that repeatedly. And I realize now why that was so important. But we'll get to that. And remember, in my mind, I'm thinking, why did she pull that knife cutting surgical manipulation maneuver to get me back here if she doesn't want to engage this way? If not emotionally, then some kind of connectivity way. What's going on? And then this is interesting. It's not like she opened up sexually, because she had been open sexually and was pushing sexually pretty hard from the beginning, and I wasn't opening up. Well, now that I have decided I have these feelings for her, even if she doesn't have them for me, it's okay for me to try to engage in them. And we did, and I got nothing. As in, even though we share this particular fetish in this particular way, and we should be compliments, we really aren't. We're two people sitting on a couch looking at images on a TV. It's detached and strange, and that's not a bad thing. And in fact, for these purposes, that was a really good thing. Because what she showed me was I was not missing out on anything sexually. Because there's nothing here. At least not what I'm looking for. In other words, she showed me I'm not missing out on some once in a lifetime opportunity. It wasn't here in the first place. And again, I don't. If this was all intentional, then this is some anti serial killer shit. It's genius. So I have closure on the sexual front. I don't have to wonder. And again, sexuality is really important to me. It's a really big deal for soul searching. I'm not losing anything here. I don't need to wonder. I've seen it, and it's not what I would be afraid I had missed out on. And we continued talking, we continued learning one another. And I'm talking about this like this happened over the course of weeks, but it was a day and a half. But these are the true natty gains when you're operating at a high soul level. Which is one of the reasons I recommend everybody try to get to a high soul level, because life gets a lot more interesting. And it slowly dawned on me over our continuing to talk, and she was reinforcing all the while that she can't love me, won't love me. And to be clear, I wasn't being a pushy, annoying, creepy person. I made it clear on my side that these are my feelings. I'm not expecting you to reciprocate. I appreciate the respect you're showing me by being forward and honest about these things. And I admitted, yes, on some level, I'm hoping this latent side of yourself will love me. But I'm okay with that not happening as long as you know you are loved. Because I get the feeling, once again, it's like the shadow. Your shadow is not seen very often, and certainly not accepted and then validated and shown affection very often. In my life, that's happened fewer than 3 times. And in her case, this latent part of herself is not some awful, scary shadow. It's everything good about the world. And I respect that part of her, I admire that part of her, I appreciate that part of her, and I wanted her to understand that she is loved for what she is, not in spite of it, even if that doesn't mean anything to her. But eventually it finally sank in. For all our connection and positivity, there is nothing here. And at first I was pissed because I knew there was nothing here from the beginning. Why did we go through all of this so thoroughly, so meticulously? Why all these extra steps? It was because initially I knew, but I didn't know. And what I was about, or what I was in the process of doing to myself, was gruesome. Essential to my eyes, but gruesome. And what she did by manipulating me to come back was walk me through the rise and the fall and the graceful landing, as graceful as any landing can be. Instead of letting me try to blow my foot off with a shotgun and then run away, I was able to have my feelings and then have levels of closure with them. I'm not devastated and I won't always wonder. I got to be a human being. How long has it been since you've been able to be a human being? She did something surgical and suspicious, and depending on how you look at it, and at the time I was afraid, negative, disrespectful, or hypocritical, talking about respecting boundaries and then respecting my decision and then manipulating me to come back in that effective of a way. She did something that seemed bad to do unto me something angelically kind. And it's already had some effects outside, preventing me from mauling myself in an effort to love and understand her, or love her by understanding her. I needed to sacrifice the way I normally go about things, the way I look at things, the way I act, and try to meet her on her terms. And briefly, because this will change back, I felt a lot more open as a consequence of needing to be open to understand and love her. Because of our mutual trust, my openness extended to other areas, and I can feel that. Now, I think that's definitely a bad idea because the rest of the world is not her. And this is why I'm saying it'll change back. But for a time, I was more open and I noticed it. And even when I swap back, I'll still have those tools in my toolbox. And a living reason for why you need them. In particular, exceptional cases, it is okay to open up and try to meet someone on their terms. That's part of loving, and furthermore, it's invigorating when you do it, especially with someone who won't hurt you for it. Because that's another thing, right? The pain of. This is why I'm so stern about most of my principles. The pain of going against your judgment that you have earned, that you've learned the hard way, and then getting stabbed in the ribs for it. There are people you can do that with, open up with, and things be okay. It's just maybe your experience with that will be restricted to sociopaths, because baseline people are the worst. But they don't need to be. And you don't need to be. Maybe most of the time you do need to be. 99.99% of the time you do need to be. But there are instances you can open up and let your guard down and be a human and things be okay. No one has ever been that considerate of me. And part of me feels like this entire experience has been an aberration. Because it probably is. But what if there is a pattern or a standard here that could be achieved? And this entire aberration was learning how it works and practicing with it. I don't know, but briefly there, it felt like life was not so bad. So the question is, how can this be recreated or cultivated while still acknowledging and dealing with the facts of the world we live in? The fact that a person like this is this much of an exception makes things difficult, but the principles shouldn't be difficult. It really shouldn't be difficult, but it always is. Trust and goodwill. I think we'll cut it here. That's a conversation for another day. This video is already long, and it's been made even longer by this cry edging I've been doing for the last 30 minutes. I've gotten more than enough leakages. I'd really like either a full-fledged sob, please, or just stop it. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.